Welcome into the Take the North podcast presented by Odyssey. I am Dan Wiederer, continuing to feed the beast during the summer months here in July. David Haugh is on vacation and won't be with us today. We'll welcome in a special guest here in a minute. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast and get our full library of episodes wherever you get your podcasts, and you can watch each of our shows on the 670 The Score YouTube page. Without further ado, I'm going to welcome in our David Haugh replacement for the day. It is Mark Potash of the Chicago Sun-Times, accomplished veteran scribe, longtime Chicago sports follower. Mark, how are we doing this morning?
I am doing great on July 6th, Dan.
I know you were taken aback when I gave you the invitation to come join us on the podcast because you felt like maybe we should both be visiting with our family, doing some summer activities, doing anything but talking football. But yet I got you to bite the hook and I reeled you into the boat.
Well, it's funny. In the old days, when I first started covering the Bears in the 90s, July 4th was the end of my vacation. And from July 5th on, I was in total football mode. I'm now 64 years old. And I can honestly say I was on vacation last week. A week ago today, I was kayaking on the Colorado River. And the vacation, we were getting ready. We were a couple days from being home. And I have to admit, it was a weird feeling because I've been kind of jaded over the last few years, but I had that similar feeling of, wow, I'm looking forward to going back to work. And that's the fun part of our job, is that we're on vacation with our families, and where a lot of people dread going back to work, we look forward to it. Now, some of us don't want to admit it to our wives or families that we're looking forward, but I actually was. That's a sign to me that I'm getting hooked in again with the optimism.
There you go.
Bears, and it's a weird thing, but it's just it's contagious or an addiction or whatever. But to answer your question, the original thing about we are in July, July 5th, July 6th, I am full bore in on the Bears at this point in time again, which feels good.
That's good to know. Where did you say you were kayaking? The Colorado River? Did you say?
Yes.
God bless you. No accidents, all smooth?
Everything no, it was, I guess apparently it was somewhere between the Hoover Dam and wherever, so it was very calm.
Yeah, don't get too close to the Hoover Dam. That could be dangerous.
Yeah, very doable.
Well, so look, like I always look forward to going back. I just wish it was maybe 2 weeks later because it always feels like an abrupt end to summer. I will say this, now that we are back in training camp mode at Lake Forest, it doesn't feel so cumbersome because you don't have to ditch your household and your family for 4 weeks and go stay in Bourbonnais for most of 4 weeks. And now you get the opportunity to just be a little bit closer. So that's good, but it's sneaking up on us. I mean, we're inside of 3 weeks from the report date, and you know what happens when report date hits. It's full steam ahead really until February. And so we're right there. And I thought today would be a good opportunity and a good time to do almost a direction podcast and examine the direction of the Bears. And there's only one way, in my opinion, to kind of examine the direction of the Bears, and it's to get a pulse on how we feel about the people with the steering wheel in their hands. And in my opinion, there's 4 guys. Starts at the top: Kevin Warren, general manager Ryan Poles, head coach Matt Eberflus, quarterback Justin Fields. So I figured we'd pick off one of those one by one. But you mentioned a minute ago that you're getting sucked back into the optimism as we sit here on July 6th. Where are you setting your tentative win total bar right now?
It's kind of fairly modest, actually, 8-9.
Okay.
I guess that's modest. I think I don't consider the Bears really a 3-win team. I mean, they were not trying to win, so 3 wins is a little deceptive. I mean, they're more like a 4, 5, 6-win team to me. And so, and with the kind of the long view that they've taken, the way they've handled the offseason, I just think it's acceptable. 8-9, 9-8. I think that's what's expected, and I think anything less than that would be a disappointment. That's okay. Also, you got to point that out too, is that it needs to be a significant step forward. I'm just not saying that they have to be in the playoffs. Where if they'd gotten like Will Anderson and Orlando Brown and really made the big moves that were more for immediate success, maybe you'd set the bar a little bit higher. But I like the long view that Poles has taken, and based on that, I'm saying 8-9. I think with Justin Fields still standing at the end would be, I think, a pretty good season.
So I've got them kind of on the 7-10, 6-11 fence right now. You obviously would qualify that as a disappointment if they finish there. It's going to be very fascinating, and we all know kind of the ebbs and flows of injuries and luck and all the things that go with that. But let's go back to January. Let's start with the biggest thing that happened to start this offseason, and it was the Bears hiring Kevin Warren to be the replacement for Ted Phillips, who had been overseeing everything, really, as the president and CEO of the organization for more than 2 decades, a sustained track record of mediocrity. When Kevin was hired, and now obviously in the 5.5 months since, what was your reaction, and what are your hopes for what a change in direction at the very top could possibly mean for this organization?
Well, it's so early now, Dan, that it's hard to really say or quantify exactly what Kevin Warren has done. Although he could pay for himself with the stadium deal if he gets the thing done. But my take on Kevin Warren is, to me, I've been covering the Bears for a long time. Anything that buffers the head coach and the GM from the McCaskies is a good thing. And Ted Phillips in that respect. And Ted Phillips didn't do that. He was part of the family. And I think having a guy like Kevin Warren in between, I think that just helps. I can't explain it exactly. All I'm saying is, I just feel like somebody who really knows how to play this game, which obviously he already does. He's playing it very well with the stadium. I think somebody who knows how to play the game and like I said, buffer themselves from the McCaskies, who frankly, just not real good at football. It's running a football team. It's all there is to it. I think that's a good thing. That's why I think that was a good move. I think it will pay dividends down the road, and I think it will affect the success of the head coach and the GM, because when the McCaskies were in charge, I'm talking about Ted and George, everybody from Ryan Pace, Matt Nagy, everybody became the worst version of themselves. Matt Nagy is not a bad coach. I think Ryan Pace is not a bad GM, but he became the worst version of himself because there's just some kind of dysfunction at Haugh that kind of pervades from the top. And I think having a buffer in between that now, I think I can't prove it, but I just feel like that can't do anything but help.
You called it a dysfunction. I've called it a dysfunction in the past. I think it's an attention to detail that is often lacking throughout the entire organization that has weighed them down for a long time. And Kevin has obviously been given the chief responsibility of not only hiring the general managers going forward, but performing their performance reviews, which was always a very interesting task for me to watch Ted and George perform these performance reviews kind of just willy-nilly, and you never really knew what they were looking at, and you never knew how sophisticated the lens was. Kevin's at least been in the league for 30 years. He's worked for the Rams, he's worked for the Lions, he's worked for the Vikings, he's been in different capacities, he's been a player agent. He comes at this from a lot of different angles, and I think his oversight of Ryan Poles might be one of the more underrated parts of how he can aid this franchise, and just being a resource for Ryan and not just a direct report, if that makes sense, and being able to provide feedback and guidance and the things that maybe Ryan Pace would have benefited from in very critical moments when they were making very critical decisions. Now I think you have a little bit more stability at that top that's really gonna pay off, and it hopefully will show itself.
Yeah, I think it just puts a kind of for lack of a better way of putting it, a football guy in charge of football at Haugh. And the number one standard, I think, and I don't know Kevin Warren very well, but I got a feeling the number one standard at Haugh will no longer be he's a nice guy. I get along with him. I like him. We think the same way. And that I'm only a quarter joking about that. That's a bad thing at Haugh. The way they hired people and the way they hired people who hired people, going back to the Emory situation. I just think having a different standard, a more professional football standard, will help.
And when you get into pivotal moments in franchise history, you don't need to go get Bill Polian to come tell you that you don't have enough blue chip players, or that you need to get rid of X, Y, and Z, or you need to go this direction to try and hire a coach. So hopefully that will be a step in the right direction. When it comes to the stadium, you're an Arlington Heights resident, correct?
I am.
Okay, so does this have intrigue to you as a resident as much as it has intrigue to you as a obviously a beat reporter for the team?
Yes, it absolutely does, because when I appealed my property taxes, they told me what it was, and I couldn't say try again, which apparently was what Kevin Warren is telling them. So
your house is only valued at like 157 million, and it's not the 197 million.
Yeah, you
the Bears have.
You know me. But yeah, I'm just kind of kidding about that. But it's just, so it is interesting being in there, because all I know is my wife says she doesn't want her taxes to go up, and with these stadium deals are interesting because you never know if it's a benefit. This is not like when they ran the interstate in the 50s and 60s. The interstate going through your town was boom or bust. If it went through your town, it was great. If it didn't, it did not. I don't think anyone's really said it really knows if a stadium is the lure for a community that they, if you look back, it doesn't seem like it's an automatic thing. So that in itself is not automatic. So we'll see what happens. I will say this. I think anticipating the next question or another question is like, I don't think this is an all-out bluff by the Bears to look elsewhere. I think if it comes, I think if Cook County or the assessor, whoever the authorities are in charge, Arlington Heights, I think if they really stuck to their guns and tried to stick it to the Bears, I think the Bears would look elsewhere, and it would be great if it was Chicago. But I do think, on the other hand, they are very, very close to pot committed on this for two reasons. One, they own the property, so they've got to pay the tax anyway. They could sell it, but that would be a pain. And the other thing is, Arlington Heights just logistically is I kind of confident in saying that this is the best deal they're going to get logistically as far as what they want to build, where they want to build it. This Naperville, Hammond, wherever in Indiana, Rockford, anywhere else is not going to compare. So they've got two reasons to get this deal done, and I think it will get done. I'm kind of in the back of my mind hoping against hope that Chicago would come up with something, because I'd love to see the Bears just do a stadium. Just do a stadium. Why?
Arlington Heights, right? Like the size of that property is just so intriguing for what you could potentially do and the fantasy world that you could create out there. So it feels like just a no-brainer. You own it. You know what your vision is there. Yeah. And now it's about getting some tax certainty and some financial clarity on a number of things, and then trying to march forward there, which hopefully that's why Kevin Warren was brought in. One of the questions I always had, it was funny when, I was in Minnesota covering the Vikings at the time when a lot of this stadium stuff was in the infancy stages, and you'd have these rallies down at the state capitol trying to keep the Vikings in Minneapolis instead of out, in other parts of Minnesota. And there would be players going down to these rallies at the state capitol to speak. And the question was always, well, is Christian Ponder really going to be there when US Bank Stadium opens? As it turns out, he wasn't, right? So this is my segue into saying, Ryan Poles, Matt Eberflus, as the leaders of this football team, will they still be in their positions when the stadium opens? And if so, what is it that we are subscribing to? What is it we're believing in? Let's start with Ryan Poles. A little bit more than a year and a half now, right? That we've gotten to know Ryan, and we've gotten to see him do his job. Where are you right now in terms of how you feel he's doing, and what's next in obviously the process of building a team that can sustain success?
Well, Dan, I think Ryan Poles is an upgrade from Ryan Pace just by the way he approaches the job. He does not play the spy versus spy game. He's not totally clandestine. He plays the national media. He plays the game. I guess I can't think of a better way to put it, but he plays the game. When he has something that is golden, like the number one pick, he says it. He knows it. He's not afraid to bargain, even somewhat publicly, and publicly acknowledge what he has. And I just think in general that's a good way of doing things. I think the whole secrecy thing in general in the NFL is detrimental, and I think they outsmart themselves. The Bears certainly did with Trubisky, and so I think just in that respect, I think he's a guy. Now we don't know a lot about him. He's a young guy who's doing this for the first time. I just feel like from what I've seen so far, I see him growing into this job and kind of spreading his wings. And I would say, when Kevin Warren replaces Roger Goodell as the commissioner of the NFL, I think Ryan Poles will be the leading candidate to replace Kevin Warren as president of the Bears.
You've got him climbing upward.
I think he has that. I'm saying I think he has that potential. Now, I'm just saying this. I will say this many times. That's what this year is all about. This is a critical year that will determine a lot about everybody we're going to talk about, including Ryan Poles. So we don't know, but right now the way he has done things, the long view, I like that. And just,
patience too. He's at a patient level. He hasn't been sucked in by the outside world's impatience to try to get this thing going. He understands that the Bears' past is not his fault, and that he doesn't have to accelerate his timeline because people before him made catastrophic mistakes.
Well, he's not just saying we want to build sustained success. Everybody wants to do that. But when you say that and then you start trading draft picks like crazy, like Ryan Pace did, you're not really trying to build for sustained success. But he says it and he's doing it. I don't even know if he said it, but he's doing it by just the way he handled the number one pick, and by the way he's just handled in general everything is towards sustaining success. And not to get too far ahead of you, but I would say that's my one thing I would say about both Eberflus and Poles is I don't know right now if they're any better than Pace and
Right.
Nagy, but I do think they will handle success better. And I think that's the huge key. The Bears have not had 3 winning seasons in a row since like 1987, 88 or
Correct.
86, 87.
You're right.
What we're all talking about in the big picture is not just a playoff season or a 1 or 2 year run. The Bears fans deserve to have a nice run of sustained success where they have a chance they can think of themselves, think good about themselves and about their team for a long time. And I think this right now, these two guys, they are better equipped. They have to get there, and we don't know if they will. But if they do get there, I have more confidence that they will sustain it.
Even just a half decade's worth of sustained success, right? That's not too much to ask for. It's not too much to ask for. I'm going on season 11 now, have not covered a playoff victory yet in my time in Chicago. So it tells you where they've been. I love the stat you gave. I use that all the time, the 3 consecutive winning seasons since 1988. A lot has happened in the world. A lot has happened in the franchise since then. A question here that we've talked about in the media room, we've talked about offline. Bring it here to the public here, the Hall of the Tank. Right. The Bears lost 14 games last year, and a big chunk of this fan base wanted to throw a parade and take the floats down Michigan Avenue as fast as they possibly could. As we zoom out now in July of 2023, what was the ultimate Hall of the Tank, in your opinion, and where do they go from here trying to build on what was celebrated as calculated failure in 2022?
Well, I was pro tank. I mean, so I mean, I think the best. I thought
so you were shouting at your Take the North episodes late last season when David and I were.
Well, I don't want to say what I was shouting, but maybe I was, maybe I wasn't. But no, I thought it was interesting when you talk about the hall. If you talk about the literal hall, that
Yes.
obviously, they got they dropped the 8 spots in the draft and picked up a pick for next year. A second round pick. Was it Tyreek Stevenson? I guess DJ Moore. They set themselves up. I think long term. What's interesting about that, I think, in the whole offseason, when you talk about the Bears came in, I hope we're not getting too far off track with this, but they came in with this great draft capital and this number 1 pick, and name recognition wise, they didn't get as much out of it as you would. They didn't get Will Anderson, you know what I'm saying? They didn't get the big name.
DJ Moore and Darnell Wright, right?
Yeah,
I mean, that's it.
DJ Moore, to us, he's like a revelation because we never seen a receiver like that. In Green Bay, he would be like, a downgrade. You know what I'm saying? So, and I'm not saying he's a good player, and I think he will be good, but I'm just saying by the impression, he really didn't make as much hay. Didn't get Orlando Brown. Didn't get, who was it, Hargraves, the defensive, who was the top defensive. He didn't get the top players, and so. But I still think he still set himself up well. So I think the Hall was worth it, and I think that will be an interesting question. I don't know if Poles will answer it honestly, but he was very chagrined, kind of embarrassed about having that number 1 pick. And when we talked to him right after the season, and based on what he's got, that Hall he got, DJ Moore, the number 1 pick for next year, I think a number 2 in 2025. Which helped the Bears better? Would it have been better if the Bears, and I could ask you this, would it have been better for the Bears to win those 4 games and know that they had either a quarterback or a team that could finish and have the number 13 pick, which is what they would have had at 7 and 10? Or is it better to have what they have? I would argue right now that they're better off finishing 3 and 14 and getting the haul they did, because I think DJ Moore will teach you how to win just by being open. When in that Miami game, when you, instead of throwing to Equinemius St. Brown and who drops that pass, it's going to be DJ Moore who's going to be either wide open, or Darnell Mooney who's going to be wide open because DJ Moore is on the field. Then you're going to win that game, okay? Though that's why players teach you how to win.
I don't have a definitive answer to your question, and that's kind of been my point all along, is that the idea that the only way to a brighter future was to hit rock bottom and get the number 1 pick and then turn it into a bunch of picks, basically. DJ Moore, the one established player, and then a bunch of picks, which are just lottery tickets that you hope you can go cash in at some point. Had you won 4 more games, but you had identified that Travis Gibson or Dominique Robinson were going to be your long-term difference-making edge rusher, you identified that Chase Claypool could be your number 1 receiver, and then you didn't have to go trade that number 1 pick for DJ Moore because you already traded a number 1 pick for Chase Claypool, right? And so you could have won 3 or 4 more games with players that you already had in-house establishing themselves as difference-making building blocks for the future, most notably Justin Fields, which I think the consensus now, particularly around the league, I'm not going to talk about Chicago, around the league, is that we don't know. Heading into the 2023 season, it's widely seen as a make or break season for who Justin can be. Is he a top tier, top 8, top flight, difference-making second contract quarterback, or is he a guy where you're going, man, we're going to do what we did with Jay Cutler, and we're going to cross our fingers every year that this year is the breakthrough, and we're going to sit going through this mediocrity over and over again. So it's a fascinating situation. It's a choose your own adventure that we're only going to be able to see the pages that the Bears actually chose, right? Which is, finish with 14 losses, go down this path, get this capital, and see what it turns into. I'll switch gears on you here just because we want to check these boxes. With Matt Eberflus going into 2023, he comes off a year which finished with 14 losses in his only year as Bears coach, finished with a franchise record 10-game losing streak. The hits principle didn't make their pass rushers sack the quarterback more. Their takeaway totals were fine. They weren't outstanding. Where are you in the things that you need Matt Eberflus to show you in his second season as coach to believe that he is, star potential, or at least championship fueling contributor to this organization?
Only everything. Like you said, Matt, nice guy. He hasn't shown anything yet. Who overachieved on that defense? That's his big thing, is getting guys over. Who overachieved on that defense? Like you said, the hits principle, we really didn't see it for takeaways. But again, I go back to what I always say. That's what this year is all about. Now it's the second year. Now they know what they need. Now it's a little bit, I think it's a little bit easier, I think, for them to kind of pinpoint who will work and who will not, now that they know exactly what they've got. And that's what this year is all about, because DeMarcus Walker, kind of uninspiring edge rusher, right? For a team that needs an edge rusher is bad. Well, let's see how good their intuition about players are and how they fit in their scheme. I joke about scheme fit and them being so scheme specific, but now they have all this knowledge on offense and defense. This is the year where all the players, not all, but many of them, have to fit. And it's all about coaching, development, and Eberflus doing what he's supposed to do. So,
and you better get some production out of Tremaine Edmonds, right? If you're going to go make that your headline free agent signing in the 2023 offseason, it can't just be because he's long and disrupts passing lanes. There better be big plays every single week, really, that tell you that contract that they invested in him is paying dividends and giving you a guy. Obviously, he's very young for how long he's been in the league. This is a guy that, through the end of the decade, you can build with and win because of.
And that goes to the point of kind of intuition about players and fit and all that stuff, because they basically traded Roquan Smith, a smaller, less a physically imposing player, but a hell of a football player who's gotten the job done. Basically, they traded him for Tremaine Edmonds and I guess Jervon Dexter, and I think it's Noah Sewell, basically. So we'll see. They are in love with that whole, what is that athletic score thing? I can't. Athletic score. They are in love with that. To me, that's like old school size and speed.
Scares me.
And like I said, I've said this before. That's in the past, teams would just be totally focused on that size and speed and the guys who look great, and then end up with a bunch of players who look like Tarzan, play like Jane, and that's how you end up having disappointing teams, and that's happened to the Bears in the past. So, but on the other hand, it's a different era, and maybe they're not as solely obsessively focused on that. Maybe that's just part of it. But I'm saying that is what they like. It's a good point about they love, and they. Other players have pointed out how they love the length, the size of Edmonds versus Roquan.
Yeah. And
so we'll see. Roquan's a pretty good player. He earned the money. He got, somebody else paid him, so somebody else thought so. So I think that'll be a good test case of just how good these guys are at finding the right guy. Because maybe Roquan wasn't the best player for their defense the way he wanted to run it. Okay, that's fine. But Edmonds has to prove that they're right.
This is the class. You just said the two words that I would stamp on the front cover of the 2023 Bears season, and it's "we'll see." I feel like this is an entire year of "we'll see" across the board, and no one more so than the fulcrum of this whole thing, the guy who's going to make it go up or go down, and it's Justin Fields. And so as we kind of wrap up here, we know what Justin Fields' 2022 season was. We know what that sizzle was. We know the intoxication it gave Chicago Bears fans to know that, my God, we have a human highlight reel in our huddle on any given play that can break a game open. Now we need to see what he can be as an NFL quarterback and as an NFL passer. As you walk into 2023, you're going to have 6 months now from today through the end of the regular season to judge Justin. What are you judging him on?
I just want to see him be a quarterback. I know it's a real simple thing, but that's the one thing we haven't really seen. Can he will a team to victory? Can he make players better? Can he force a guy to not drop that pass in the clutch moment? We just haven't seen him play quarterback, be a quarterback, and part of that is because of the supporting cast. I think that situation has been solved. I think this may not be the best supporting cast in the NFL, but it's far from the worst, and it's good enough for a guy like Justin Fields to prove that he can be accurate deep and all that stuff. But really, I just want to see him be a quarterback and be the leader they say is. We've heard that so many times about what a great leader quarterbacks are. Even Mike Glennon was supposed to be that, remember? and it just never, and it doesn't come to fruition. Players don't follow. I need to see players follow what Justin Fields, where he's leading them to.
I always say that this type A mentality and this leadership gene it's a prerequisite for high level success. It's not a guarantee of it. There's a lot more boxes that need to be checked for you to get there. And so I have zero questions about Justin's, competitive DNA, the way he works, the way he connects with teammates. My questions are, can he stand in the pocket with a rush coming around him and process fast enough to get the ball where it needs to go, when it needs to be there, with the precision that it needs to get there with, and so, right. Like that's going to be the eye test.
That's what I mean. It sounds simple. I'm not trying to not answer it, but just play quarterback. And that is it. I think from what we saw in OTAs is that quick release is getting rid of the ball. I think that's going to be one thing. If you're really a film watcher, you're going to be looking at, will he get rid of the ball? We don't know just how much better the pass protection will be. I think it will be better. It can't be worse. But will he still be able to make that split-second decision and find the right guy and know when to make his progression to the next guy and the next guy after that? It always seems to work backwards when the way they explain it. Well, he wasn't open. It just never seems to work out. And that's what he's got to show this year, that he can actually play quarterback, and this offense can be a regular NFL offense.
Yeah, and to clean up some of the sloppiness, half dozen times last year, you have one of those catch the snap, throw the ball plays that were incomplete somehow. It just the quick ones out. And why is that ball sailing 2 feet behind the receiver? What's going on wrong here, either with footwork or timing or whatever else? So you just need to clean up the sloppiness. And then to your point, as important as anything, when you're in a game, in the last 5 minutes of the game, you either have a short lead or you're coming from behind by a small amount of win. Be the reason you win the game. Winning time is winning time in the NFL. There's a reason Patrick Mahomes is the league's biggest star right now, because when the Chiefs get the ball and they're down in the final 4 minutes, you basically just assume that you're buckling into your couch to watch a game-winning drive. And at some point, Ryan Poles keeps talking about it, building a championship mindset. That's part of it. It's believing when you get in that huddle that right. Not like, I really hope we get a few plays here to win this game. It's like, we're in the huddle, let's go do it. And you need to show that a handful of times for that hurdle to be cleared.
Absolutely, Dan. This is a transition. Fields is in a transition right now with regard to the supporting cast. They have given him a supporting cast that can give him an opportunity to be better. Now, as this year progresses, he has to be the guy who makes everyone else better. That's what a quarterback does. So now they've done their part by giving him players I think that he can win with. Now it's up to him to make players better, to command, you have that command focus in clutch moments and make them better. That's what the great quarterbacks do. That's why Justin Fields is here, and that's what he's got to show in 2023.
Well, this will be fun. As you said, it's closing in quickly. We report to training camp in less than 3 weeks. 2 weeks beyond that, we get to go to Indianapolis for some crossover practices with the Colts, which will be kind of the old school version of training camp. On the road, all the writers getting a chance to hang out. Night practices, which will be fun, apparently at a beautiful complex in Westfield, Indiana. So it's right around the corner here, and obviously appreciate you taking some time out of your summer here back from Colorado to join us, and away we go. This will be fun.
Thanks, Dan. I'm glad, honestly, sincerely glad to say I'm glad. I'm looking forward to it. I just hope I don't regret it like I normally do in January.
You'll never regret it. It's always fun, and we can't wait to get it started. That's Mark Potash. He is now one of us on the Take the North podcast. I'm sure he will be back with us before too long. I'm Dan Wiederer. Again, remember to like, subscribe, do all the things that help promote our podcast, and we will have a new episode for you again next week. For Mark Potash, Adam Stadzinski, our producer, I'm Dan Wiederer. We'll see you next time.